A woman wearing designer sunglasses stood in the middle of an Ohio grocery store checkout lane with her arms crossed and a look of pure annoyance on her face. In front of her, a tired black single mother was carefully removing groceries from her cart, one item at a time. A carton of eggs, a loaf of bread, a package of chicken. Each item returned to the cashier felt heavier than it should have. The single mother kept counting small bills in her hand while checking a few coupons. The line behind her continued growing. A few customers shifted impatiently. Others simply watched. The woman in sunglasses finally let out a loud sigh. "Oh, come on," she said. "If you can't afford your groceries, maybe don't. Hold up everybody else's day." Several heads turned immediately. The single mother paused. She looked embarrassed for a moment. Not angry, not defensive, just tired. The cashier looked uncomfortable. Nobody said anything. The woman continued. "You know what's wrong these days? People keep making bad decisions and expect everybody else to wait for them." The store became quiet. The single mother slowly looked up. "You talking to me, ma'am?" she asked calmly. The woman laughed. "I don't see anyone else counting pennies." A few people exchanged uncomfortable looks. The single mother took a breath. She could have argued. She could have raised her voice. Instead, she smiled. "Well, ma'am, if my coupons offended your perfume, I apologize on behalf of the discount section." A few customers covered their mouths. Someone near the back chuckled. Even the cashier struggled not to smile. The woman did not appreciate the joke. Her face tightened immediately. "Oh, so you're funny." "I'm trying to be," the single mother replied. "Being stressed is already expensive." More quiet laughter spread through the line. The woman stepped closer. Her voice became sharper. "Maybe if people spent less time making jokes and more time planning their lives, they wouldn't end up standing in grocery stores hoping. Coupons save them." The words landed hard. The laughter disappeared. The entire checkout area froze. The single mother's smile faded slightly. For the first time, the hurt showed in her eyes. Still, she refused to lose her dignity. Still, she refused to give the woman the argument she seemed determined to create. Several customers looked away. Others stared at the floor. Nobody wanted to become part of the scene. Yet nobody stopped it either. The woman folded her arms again. Honestly, some people should learn their limits before becoming parents. A shocked silence swept through the checkout area. The comment was cruel, personal, and completely unnecessary. The single mother lowered her eyes briefly toward the groceries she was trying so hard to buy. For a second, it looked like she might finally break. Instead, she straightened her shoulders. She looked directly at the woman. Then she smiled again. A smaller smile this time. A stronger one. The kind built from surviving difficult days. What neither woman realized was that someone standing only a few feet away had witnessed every second of the exchange. And before this humiliating moment was over, the entire store was about to learn that the person being mocked was not who they thought she was. The silence inside the Ohio grocery store felt heavier than the shopping carts lined up behind the register. The woman in designer sunglasses was not finished. If anything, the small laughs from the customers seemed to make her even more determined to embarrass the single mother standing in front of her. She looked at the groceries still sitting on the checkout counter and shook her head. "Look at this." Nobody answered. She pointed toward the coupons. People always want sympathy for problems they created themselves. The single mother remained calm. She said nothing. The woman continued. "I mean, seriously, if money is this tight, maybe some people should focus on responsibility instead of making life harder for everybody around them." The cashier opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something, then stopped. The line remained frozen. The single mother slowly gathered a few items she planned to put back. Her movements were careful, controlled. She was clearly trying to protect her dignity. That should have been enough, but it wasn't. The woman laughed softly. "You know what amazes me? People expect applause for doing the bare minimum." The single mother finally looked up. Her eyes were tired but steady. "Ma'am, I don't need applause. Clearly. I just need groceries." A few customers nodded quietly. The woman rolled her eyes. "Well, maybe this store should start offering financial planning classes. Next to the cereal aisle." A couple of people visibly cringed. The comment was met with silence, not agreement, not support, just silence. The kind of silence that happens when people know something is wrong. The single mother exhaled slowly. Then she smiled again. "You know, I've survived worse things than coupons." The woman smirked. "I'm sure you have." At that exact moment, a calm voice came from nearby. "She's right." The words weren't loud, but they immediately drew attention. The woman turned first. Several customers turned with her. A tall man who had been standing quietly near another register stepped forward. His expression was calm. His posture relaxed. There was no anger on his face, no need for it. The woman immediately brightened. Recognition flashed across her face. For the first time since arriving, she looked pleased. "Oh, Marvel." Her voice suddenly sounded friendly, almost relieved. She straightened her jacket. Several customers recognized him too. Whispers began moving through the checkout area. The woman smiled confidently. She clearly believed the situation was about to go her way. After all, people like Marvel usually belonged in her world. The world of money, influence, exclusive events, powerful connections. She laughed lightly. "Can you believe this?" Marvel didn't answer. The woman gestured toward the single mother. "I was just trying to explain that some people need to make better decisions." Marvel remained silent. The woman kept talking. "Honestly, I'm probably the only one willing to say it out loud." Still no response. Something about Marvel's expression began making her uncomfortable. The confidence on her face started fading, slowly, almost imperceptibly, because Marvel wasn't looking at her, not even once. His attention was somewhere else. The entire store followed his gaze. It landed on the single mother. The woman who had spent the last several minutes quietly enduring humiliation. The woman standing beside a few groceries she could barely afford. The woman holding coupons in one hand and dignity in the other. Marvel took another step forward. The checkout area became completely silent. The single mother looked confused. She had not spoken to him. She had not even noticed him earlier. Marvel studied her face for a moment, almost as if he were making sure. Then a warm smile appeared. A real smile, the kind reserved for someone important. Someone remembered. Someone valued. When he finally spoke, every person in that store listened. Evenly. The single mother blinked. Marvel's smile grew. "I never forgot your kindness." The words landed like thunder. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The cashier stared. Customers exchanged shocked looks. The woman in designer sunglasses suddenly looked as though the floor had shifted beneath her feet. Because whatever she expected Marvel to say, it wasn't that. And the story behind those words was about to change all three lives forever. Before we continue, let's take a brief moment to pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us together today. Help us remember that every person has value, regardless of their circumstances. Teach us to show kindness when others choose judgment, and give us the wisdom to recognize character where others only see appearances. May this story encourage, inspire, and remind us that dignity and compassion never go unnoticed. Amen. Welcome to Love, Money, and Secret, where America's greatest stories and life lessons meet creativity and heart. If you're new to the family, we're grateful to have you here. And if you enjoy meaningful stories that inspire, uplift, and leave you thinking long after they end, please take a moment to subscribe, like this video, and leave a comment. Those simple actions help YouTube share these stories with more people, and they help our channel continue growing. Now tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? And here's another question. Have you ever been judged before someone knew your story? Because what just happened inside that Ohio grocery store is something many people can relate to. A woman struggling to buy food. Another woman convinced money gave her the right to look down on others. And a successful billionaire who suddenly recognized someone everybody else overlooked. But here's the part nobody inside that grocery store understood yet. Marvel wasn't speaking to evenly out of pity. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He wasn't stepping into the situation because he felt sorry for her. The truth went much deeper. Years before this moment, long before this crowded checkout line, long before Marvel became one of the most respected business leaders in the country, there had been a day he never forgot. A day when almost everyone ignored him. A day when one person chose kindness without expecting anything in return. That person was Evenly. And while Abigail was standing there believing she had embarrassed a poor single mother, she had no idea she had just insulted someone. Marvel respected more than many people in his wealthy social circle. The uncomfortable silence inside the store was only the beginning, because the story was no longer about coupons. It was no longer about groceries. And it was definitely no longer about who had the most money. It was about character. It was about respect. It was about the difference between being important and being valuable. Most of all, it was about three people whose lives were about to collide, in a way none of them expected. One would learn that wealth cannot purchase dignity. One would discover that kindness given freely often returns when least expected, and one would find something far more valuable than success. Stay with me, because the truth behind Marvel's words, "Evenly, I never forgot your kindness," was about to reveal a connection that would change everything. And before this story ends, you'll see why the person everyone underestimated became the person nobody could ignore. Before that Ohio grocery store ever went quiet, Evenly's morning began in a small apartment where the kitchen table served as an office, a dining room, and a place to count what little money was left. She sat with a notebook open, one hand pressing a calculator, the other holding a pencil worn almost halfway down. "Rent first," she whispered. "Lights second. Food third. Gas if the car decides to act saved this week." From the corner, Her child's small voice asked, "Mama, are we rich yet?" Evenly looked up and smiled. "Baby, we are rich in prayer, personality, and unpaid bills. 2 out of 3 ain't bad." The child laughed, and that laugh gave Evenly strength for another day. She packed a simple lunch, folded a clean shirt for work, and checked her purse twice. Coupons, small bills, grocery list, church flyer, and 1 emergency peppermint she kept like medicine. Her phone buzzed with another reminder about money she already knew she didn't have. Evenly stared at the screen for 1 second, then placed it face down. "Nope," she said softly. "You are not stealing my joy before breakfast." She worked wherever honest work opened a door, cleaning offices, helping at community events, sitting with elderly neighbors, taking weekend shifts when someone called last minute. She never made it sound heroic. To her, it was simply life. Later that morning, while walking through her Ohio neighborhood, someone called from a porch. "Evenly, you still coming by after church practice?" Evenly lifted her hand. "If my feet don't file a complaint before then?" "Yes. You work too much." "I know. I'm waiting for money to get tired and chase me for once." The neighbor laughed. Evenly kept moving, shoulders straight, smile ready, even when her stomach reminded her she had skipped breakfast. At the community center, she helped stack chairs after a small church meeting. Nobody paid her for it. She did it because someone had to, and because she believed kindness should not always come with an invoice. One woman offered her a bag of canned goods. Evenly accepted it with gratitude, not shame. "Thank you," she said. "You just helped my cabinet stop echoing." By afternoon, she checked her grocery list again. Bread, eggs, chicken if the price behaved, a few vegetables, something sweet if the coupons performed a miracle. She looked at the money in her hand and took a deep breath. "All right, Lord," she murmured. "Let these dollars stretch like they took yoga classes," then Evenly grabbed her purse, locked her apartment door, and headed toward the same Ohio grocery store where a woman named Abigail would soon mistake her struggle for weakness. While Evenly spent her mornings deciding which bill could wait a few more days, Abigail lived in a completely different world. Abigail never checked price tags. She never counted coupons. She never stood in a grocery store wondering which item had to be removed from the cart. To Abigail, success was something people could see. The right clothes, the right car, the right social circles, the right image. She believed those things told the world who mattered and who didn't. That morning, Abigail stood in front of a large mirror adjusting an expensive jacket. She examined herself carefully, not because anything was wrong, because appearance mattered to her. A lot. She stepped back and nodded. Perfect. A few minutes later, she picked up her designer handbag and headed out. As she drove through Ohio, she spoke to herself the way people do when they are completely convinced they are right. "People judge you every day," she said. "Might as well give them something impressive to look at." To Abigail, first impressions were everything. She often decided what she thought about someone within seconds. The neighborhood, the clothes, the confidence, the car, the job. She believed all of it told a story. Unfortunately, she rarely looked deeper than the surface. Later, while stopping for coffee, Abigail noticed a woman struggling to carry several bags to a vehicle. Instead of offering help, she looked away, not because she was busy, because she didn't think it was her responsibility. She took a sip of coffee and continued her day. By early afternoon, she received a message reminding her about Anne, upcoming social event connected to people she considered important. Abigail smiled. Those events were her favorite places where successful people gathered, places where appearances carried weight, places where she felt she belonged. She spent the next hour running errands around town. As she moved from store to store, she barely noticed the people around her. The cashier, the worker stocking shelves, the elderly customer moving slowly through an aisle. To Abigail, most people blended into the background, not because they lacked value, because she rarely took the time to see it. Eventually, she decided to stop at a grocery store before heading home. She only needed a few things, nothing complicated. A quick visit, a few purchases, then she'd be on her way. At least that was the plan. She parked her vehicle and walked confidently toward the entrance. Inside, she grabbed a shopping basket and headed through the aisles. Everything felt normal, routine, forgettable, until she joined a checkout line. A line where a tired black single mother stood carefully counting coupons and small bills. A line where patience would soon disappear. A line where Abigail would make a decision that revealed far more about her character than she ever intended. And within minutes, the entire store would be watching. By the time Abigail stepped into the checkout line, Evenly had already placed her groceries on the counter with careful hands. Bread, eggs, rice, a small pack of chicken, a few vegetables. Nothing fancy, nothing wasteful. Evenly opened her purse and pulled out folded coupons, then counted. the small bills between her fingers. The cashier gave her the total, evenly looked at the screen, then looked down at her money. "Okay," she said quietly. "Let me take off the chicken first." The cashier nodded with sympathy. "No problem," evenly smiled gently. "Thank you, I'm just negotiating with my wallet. It's acting stubborn today." A woman behind her gave a quiet laugh. Abigail did not. She shifted her basket from one hand to the other and released a loud sigh. Evenly heard it, but she kept her eyes on the counter. "Maybe remove the juice too," Evenly said. "Water still works. It never got fancy on us." The cashier smiled a little. Abigail stepped closer. "Are we going to be here all afternoon?" The line went still. Evenly turned slightly. "I'm almost done, ma'am." Abigail looked at the coupons in Evenly's hand. "If you have to calculate every penny, maybe this isn't the store for you?" Evenly blinked once, but she did not answer quickly. The cashier froze. A customer behind Abigail looked down at the floor. Evenly picked up another item and placed it aside. "I'm not trying to disturb anybody," she said. Abigail gave a short laugh. "That's exactly what you're doing." Evenly's fingers tightened around the coupons. Still, her voice stayed calm. "Well, I planned to be rich by lunch, but my bank account refused to cooperate." A few customers smiled. Someone behind the line chuckled softly. Evenly added, "So here we are, me and these coupons trying to survive. Ohio grocery prices." The small laughter gave the checkout area a little air. But Abigail's face hardened. She did not like being laughed around. "Oh, so this is funny to you?" Evenly looked at her politely. "Not really. But crying in public makes my face swell, and I still have errands." The cashier pressed her lips together, trying not to laugh. Abigail's eyes narrowed. "You people always have a joke ready?" Evenly's smile faded. "You people?" Abigail lifted her chin. "People who make poor choices and expect everybody else to be patient." The checkout lane became quiet again. Evenly took a slow breath. "I'm buying food, ma'am, not asking for your opinion." Abigail looked her up and down. Maybe if some mothers planned better, their children wouldn't have to live off coupons. That one hurt. Evenly's hand paused over the groceries. The humor left her face for a moment, but she refused to bow her head. She looked Abigail directly in the eye. "Ma'am, if my coupons offended your perfume, I apologize on behalf of the discount section." A few customers reacted immediately. One person covered a laugh. The cashier looked away, smiling despite the tension. Abigail's cheeks flushed with anger. She stepped forward, ready to push harder. What she did not know was that Marvel had just stopped near the end of the lane. He had heard enough. Abigail stepped forward with fresh confidence. The small laughs from the customers had embarrassed her, and she wanted the last word. She folded her arms. "You think you're clever, don't you?" Evenly calmly gathered the groceries she could still afford. "No, ma'am, just trying to finish shopping." Abigail shook her head. "That's the problem. People don't know how to accept responsibility anymore." Evenly said nothing. The cashier looked trapped. Several customers wished the conversation would end. Abigail continued anyway. "You stand here making jokes, but the truth is simple. Life is about choices." Evenly looked up. "It is, then maybe make better ones." The comment landed heavily. The checkout area fell silent again. For a moment nobody moved. Then a calm voice broke through the tension. "I disagree. The words were not loud. They didn't need to be." Every head turned. Marvel stepped forward. Abigail immediately recognized him. The change in her expression was almost instant. Her posture straightened. Her smile returned. "Marvel." She sounded relieved. As though help had finally arrived. As though someone important had come to support her side. "Good to see you," she said warmly. Marvel barely acknowledged her greeting. His attention remained fixed on Evenly. Abigail's smile weakened. Marvel took another step closer. Evenly looked confused. She knew she had seen him before, somewhere, years ago, but she couldn't immediately place it. Marvel studied her face. Then he smiled, not the polite smile people used in business meetings, a genuine one, a smile filled with gratitude. "Evenly?" She blinked. "Yes?" Marvel nodded slowly. "I never forgot your kindness." The entire store froze. Evenly stared at him. The cashier stared at him. Customers stared at him. Even Abigail stared at him. For the first time since entering the store, Abigail looked uncertain. Evenly searched her memory. "I'm sorry," she said gently. "Have we met before?" Marvel laughed softly. "Years ago." He glanced around the store, then back at her. "You probably don't remember." Evenly shook her head. Marvel continued. "I was sitting alone outside a church community event." Evenly's eyes narrowed slightly as she searched her memory. "You looked upset," Marvel said. "You were holding a paper plate and a bottle of water." The memory slowly returned. Marvel smiled. "Most people walk past me." Evenly remembered now. Not his name, not his status. Just the moment. Marvel continued. I was going through one of the hardest periods of my life. The store remained completely silent. I wasn't looking for advice. I wasn't looking for money. I wasn't looking for attention. His voice softened. I just needed somebody to treat me like a human being. Evenly finally remembered. The quiet man sitting alone. The man nobody seemed to notice. Marvel smiled. You sat beside me. You shared your food. You made me laugh. A small smile appeared on Evenly's face. Oh, Marvel nodded. You had no reason to help me. You didn't know who I was. You expected absolutely nothing. The customers listened carefully. Abigail's confidence continued disappearing. Marvel looked directly at Evenly. That day stayed with me. Evenly looked genuinely surprised. It was just a conversation. No, Marvel said. It was character. The silence became emotional. Marvel glanced around the store, then spoke clearly enough for everyone to hear. The woman standing here counting coupons is one of the kindest people I've ever met. Nobody said a word. Abigail lowered her eyes. For the first time that day, she looked embarrassed. Not because someone insulted her, because the truth had exposed her. Marvel returned his attention to Evenly, and in that moment Evenly realized this encounter was about far more than a grocery store. It was about a kindness she had given years ago and forgotten. A kindness that someone else never did. Years earlier, Marvel had not looked like the kind of man people moved aside for. That afternoon in Ohio, he sat outside a church community event with his jacket folded beside him and a paper in his hand he had already read too many times. The paper carried bad news, a failed deal, a financial loss, a business partner who had walked away when things became difficult. Marvel had money then, but not the kind of security people assumed. He had pressure, he had fear, he had pride he did not know how to put down. People walked past him carrying plates of food and cups of water. Some glanced at him. Most kept moving. Marvel kept his face still, but inside he felt like everything he had built was slipping through his fingers. He whispered to himself, "Get up! You don't fall apart in public!" But his body stayed on the bench. That was when Evenly appeared. She was carrying a plate with food wrapped in foil and a bottle of water, tucked under her arm. She stopped near him. "You all right?" she asked. Marvel looked up quickly. "I'm fine." Evenly tilted her head. That answer came out too fast. He almost smiled. "I said I'm fine, and I heard you," she replied. "I just didn't believe you." Marvel looked away. "I don't need anything." Evenly sat on the far end of the bench, leaving enough space so he would not feel crowded. "Good," she said. "Because I wasn't offering a sermon. I was offering." "Half a sandwich?" Marvel looked at her. She held out the wrapped food. He hesitated. Evenly smiled. "Don't worry. It's not a business contract. It's turkey and cheese." For the first time that day, Marvel laughed. It was small, but it was real. He accepted the food. "Thank you. You're welcome." For a few minutes, they sat quietly. Evenly did not ask what happened. She did not force him to explain. She simply opened her bottle of water and said, "Some days come, looking for a fight before breakfast." Marvel nodded slowly. "You have no idea. I might," she said gently. Life doesn't only visit rich neighborhoods. With problems, that made him look at her. She was not mocking him. She was not impressed by him. She was simply present. Marvel said, "I thought I knew who I could trust." Evenly looked ahead. "That one hurts, yes, but it teaches too." Marvel swallowed hard. Evenly handed him a napkin. "Whatever you lost today, don't lose yourself trying to prove a point." Those words stayed with him. Not because they were loud, because they were honest. He wanted to ask her name, but someone called from inside the event, and Evenly stood. Before leaving, she said, "Eat before that pride of yours starts charging rent." Marvel laughed again. "What's your name?" "Evenly." Then she walked back inside, never asking who he was, never asking what he owned, never asking what he could do for her. Back in the grocery store years later, Marvel looked at her with the same gratitude he had carried all this time. "You didn't know it," he said softly, "but that day, you helped me breathe again?" Evenly's eyes softened, and Abigail finally understood that the woman she mocked had once given Marvel something money could never buy. The grocery store remained unusually quiet after Marvel finished speaking. Evenly stood beside the checkout counter holding the groceries she had nearly been forced to leave behind. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. She remembered the church event now. She remembered the quiet man on the bench. What she didn't remember was expecting anything in return. Marvel smiled. "You still look surprised." "I am surprised." "You don't remember helping me?" "I remember helping somebody." Marvel laughed softly. "That sounds exactly like you." Evenly shook her head. "Honestly, I thought you forgot about that conversation before you reached the parking lot." Marvel looked at her sleeve. "I didn't forget a single word." Abigail remained silent nearby. For the first time since entering the store, she had nothing to say. The confidence she carried earlier had disappeared. Customers slowly returned to their shopping, but many continued, watching from a distance. Marvel turned back to Evenly. "Can we talk for a minute?" Evenly hesitated. "About what?" "About an opportunity." The word immediately made her cautious. She had learned long ago that opportunities and promises were not always the same thing. Marvel noticed the change in her expression. "You don't trust that word." "Not automatically. Fair?" Evenly folded her arms. "If this is about feeling sorry for me, save your time." Marvel nodded immediately. "It isn't. If it's charity, save your money too. It isn't that either." Evenly studied him carefully. Marvel continued. "I respect you too much to insult you with pity." Her tension. Marvel pointed toward the groceries. "What happened here today shouldn't have happened." "It happened?" "Yes, and I'll survive it." Marvel smiled. "I know you will." For a few seconds, neither spoke. Then Marvel said something Evenly didn't expect. "I need people around me who understand character." Evenly laughed lightly. "You came to a grocery store looking for employees?" "No. Good. That would have been strange." Marvel laughed. A genuine laugh. The kind that arrived naturally around her. Evenly noticed. That surprised her more than anything else. Most wealthy people she had encountered spent their time trying to impress others. Marvel seemed more interested in listening. He continued. "I support several community projects across Ohio." Evenly immediately raised a hand. "There it is." "What? The catch?" Marvel smiled. "There isn't one. I'm listening. I want you to visit one of the programs." Evenly narrowed her eyes. "And do what? Tell me what's wrong with it." She blinked. "That's the opportunity?" "Yes." "You want criticism?" "I want honesty." Evenly laughed. "That might be expensive." Marvel laughed again. "Probably." The tension between them eased. Not romantic. Not yet. Just comfortable. Honest. Marvel respected the fact that she never treated him differently because of his success. Evenly respected the fact that he wasn't trying to rescue her. He was treating her like someone whose opinion mattered. That distinction meant everything. Before leaving, Marvel handed her a business card. Evenly looked at it. Then looked at him. "You know I'm still going to disagree with you if you're wrong. I was hoping you would." She smiled. "That's either brave or dangerous." "Maybe both." Evenly slipped the card into her purse. As Marvel walked toward the exit, he turned back. "I'm glad I found you again." Evenly smiled politely but said nothing. She wasn't ready to trust quickly. She wasn't ready to assume anything. But for the first time in a long while, she found herself curious about what came next. And maybe some of you watching have experienced something similar. Have you ever helped someone and completely forgotten about it, only to discover years later that your kindness changed their life? Let us know in the comments. Because sometimes the smallest act of kindness travels farther than we ever realize. 3 days after the grocery store encounter, Evenly finally decided to use the business card. Not because she expected anything. Because curiosity had won the argument. She arrived at one of the Ohio community programs Marvel supported. The first thing she noticed was that nobody seemed nervous around him. That surprised her. Most successful people she had met spent a lot of energy reminding everyone they were successful. Marvel was standing near a group of volunteers carrying boxes. Not directing. Helping. Evenly stopped for a moment. "You know there are easier ways to wear expensive shoes out," she said. Marvel turned and smiled. "There you are. I came to see if your program actually works. That's the spirit. I brought criticism. I was counting on it." Evenly laughed. Marvel handed her a clipboard. "Good. Start making notes." Over the next few hours, Evenly walked through the program. She spoke to families. She listened. She observed. When she found problems, she pointed them out immediately. "This sign makes no sense." Marvel looked at it. "It seemed clear when we made it. It isn't. You're probably right." Later, she pointed toward a waiting area. "Those chairs are uncomfortable." Marvel sat in one. 5 seconds later, he stood back up. "Okay, those are terrible. See?" Marvel laughed. The more time they spent together, the more Evenly realized something unexpected. Marvel actually listened. Not because he wanted praise, because he genuinely wanted improvement. That was different, very different. Near lunchtime, they sat outside with sandwiches and bottled water. Marvel looked at her food. "You still choose the simplest thing on the menu. It's reliable." "That's your reason?" "No. What's the real reason?" Evenly smiled. "If I order something expensive and don't like it, I spend the rest of the day offended." Marvel nearly choked laughing. For a moment, neither noticed how easy the conversation had become. There was no pressure, no pretending, no performance. Just two people talking. As the afternoon continued, Marvel noticed things too. He saw how easily people trusted Evenly. He saw her encourage someone who looked discouraged. He saw her help without making herself the center of attention. Most importantly, he noticed that she treated everyone with the same respect. The volunteer. The family needing help. The person cleaning tables. Him. There was no difference. Later, as they walked toward the parking lot, Marvel said quietly, "You know what's interesting?" "What?" You never act impressed. Evenly looked at him. Should I? I don't know, most people do. She smiled. Marvel, I already met you when you were sitting on a bench eating half my sandwich. He laughed. Fair point. For the first time, something new settled between them. Not attraction built on money. Not admiration built on status. Something stronger. Mutual respect. And neither of them was in a hurry to define it. Abigail expected the grocery store incident to disappear. Embarrassing moments usually did, especially in her world. People whispered for a day, adjusted their smiles, and moved on when money returned to the room. But this time was different. A few days later, Abigail received a message about an upcoming Ohio business gathering connected to Marvel's community programs. She had expected to attend with confidence. Instead, the message was short, polite, and direct. Marvel had stepped back from the social circle Abigail worked so hard to impress. Not loudly, not dramatically, just firmly. When Abigail heard the reason, her face went cold. He's distancing himself because of that grocery store, she said. She sat in her living room, still dressed perfectly, still surrounded by expensive things that suddenly felt less powerful. Her voice lowered. That was one moment. But even as she said it, she knew that was not fully true. It was one moment that revealed a pattern. She had looked at Evenly and seen lack. Marvel had looked at Evenly and remembered character. That difference embarrassed her more than the store ever had. Later, Abigail saw Marvel at a professional event. She approached him with a careful smile. Marvel, can we talk? Marvel turned calmly. Yes. She tried to laugh lightly. I hope there are no hard feelings about the other day. Marvel did not smile. Abigail, this is not about hard feelings. Her smile faded. It was a misunderstanding. No, Marvel said gently. It was behavior. That quiet answer caught her off guard. She looked around, suddenly aware of people nearby. Marvel kept his voice respectful. I am not interested in humiliating you. That would make me no better. Abigail swallowed. Then what do you want? I want you to understand that how you treat people when you think they have nothing to offer you says more about you than any room you enter. Abigail looked away. For once, she had no elegant reply. Marvel continued. I support families who are rebuilding. I support mothers trying to stand. I support communities that deserve respect. I cannot connect my name with people who publicly shame the same people I'm trying to help. The words were calm, but they carried weight. Abigail's eyes softened, though pride still fought inside her. So I lose access because of one mistake. Marvel shook his head. You are being given a chance to correct one. That answer stayed with her, not because it was cruel, because it was fair. There was no shouting, no public revenge, no attempt to destroy her, just a mirror held steady enough for her to finally see herself. Later that evening, Abigail sat alone and replayed Evenly's calm face, the coupons, the groceries, the humor, the dignity. For the first time, Abigail understood that money had protected her image, but it had not protected her character. And now, her character was the only thing being examined. Over the next few weeks, Evenly and Marvel spent more time together, but not in the way people expected. There were no loud announcements, no expensive surprises, no public display meant to impress anyone. Marvel learned quickly that Evenly did not trust grand gestures. She trusted consistency. So he showed up at the community program when he said he would. He listened when she spoke. He changed things when she pointed out what was not working. And most importantly, he never treated her like a project. One afternoon, Evenly stood beside him near a table covered with paperwork, shaking her head. Marvel, whoever designed this form wanted people to suffer? Marvel looked at the paper. It's that bad. It asked the same question 3 different ways. By page 2, even I forgot my own address. Marvel laughed. I'll have it changed. Evenly raised one eyebrow. Just like that? Just like that? She studied him for a moment. You know, most people with money love meetings more than solutions. I've been guilty of that. I appreciate the honesty. I'm learning. That's good, she said. Learning looks nice on you. Marvel smiled, but he did not rush the moment. That was one thing Evenly noticed about him. He never pushed. He never assumed. He never tried to buy his way closer to her heart. Instead, he let trust grow slowly. Some evenings they talked after the program closed. Not about wealth, not about Abigail, not even about the grocery store. They talked about life. Evenly told him about raising her child, working different jobs, and laughing on days when crying felt easier. Marvel told her about lonely rooms, business pressure, and how success had once made him feel surrounded but unseen. One evening, Evenly said, You know what surprises me about you? What? You're quieter than I expected. Marvel smiled. Is that bad? No. It's peaceful, that word stayed with him, peaceful. Most people called him powerful, successful, important. Evenly called him peaceful, and somehow that meant more. Another day, as they walked outside, Marvel gently offered his hand. Evenly looked at it. Then looked at him. You know I move slow, right? I know. You know I don't fall for bank accounts? I was hoping you wouldn't. She smiled. That was a good answer. Then she placed her hand in his. Nothing dramatic happened. No crowd cheered. No music played. But Marvel felt something settle inside him. Evenly did too. For once, she did not feel chased. She felt respected. Marvel looked at her and said softly, I don't admire you because of what you survived. I admire the heart you kept while surviving it. Evenly's smile faded into something tender. That might be the first rich person sentence I actually liked, Marvel laughed. I'll take it. She squeezed his hand once. Don't make me regret trusting you. I won't. And for the first time, Evenly believed he meant it. A few months later, an Ohio community celebration brought together families, volunteers, local leaders, and the people whose lives had been helped through the programs Marvel supported. The atmosphere felt different from the day Evenly had stood in a grocery store counting coupons. A lot had changed. Evenly still carried the same humility. She still laughed easily. She still treated people with respect. But life had become more stable. The community work she helped improve had grown into a paid leadership position. Her ideas had helped families receive assistance faster and with more dignity. Most importantly, she no longer felt like she was carrying every burden alone. That evening, Evenly stood near the front of the event, speaking with families who genuinely appreciated her. Marvel watched from nearby. A volunteer approached him. You look proud, Marvel smiled. I am. The volunteer glanced toward Evenly. She earned it. She absolutely did. As the program began, Marvel stepped onto the stage. The room quieted. Evenly folded her arms and immediately looked suspicious. Oh no, she muttered. Marvel laughed from the stage. That reaction is exactly why I'm doing this. A wave of laughter moved through the audience. Evenly shook her head. You better not embarrass me. No promises. More laughter followed. Marvel looked across the room. Then his expression softened. A few months ago, I watched someone demonstrate character in a place where character was being tested. Evenly immediately knew where this was going. She lowered her head. Marvel continued. Many people think leadership starts with money, position, or influence. He paused. I disagree. The room listened carefully. I believe leadership starts with how you treat people when there is nothing to gain. His eyes found Evenly. This community is stronger because of Evenly. Applause filled the room. Evenly looked genuinely uncomfortable. Marvel smiled. See, I told you there was a chance of embarrassment. Evenly laughed despite herself. The applause continued. Not because Marvel was wealthy, because people agreed. They had seen her work. They had seen her kindness. They had seen her heart. Across the room, Abigail sat quietly. This time there was no anger in her expression, no superiority, no judgment, only reflection. Months earlier, she had looked at Evenly and seen someone beneath her. Now she saw someone she had completely misunderstood. The lesson had finally reached her. Not through punishment, not through humiliation, through truth. When the applause faded, Marvel stepped down from the stage. He walked directly toward Evenly. The room immediately became interested. Evenly pointed at him. If you're planning another speech, I'm leaving. Marvel smiled. No speech. Good. I already used my speech. Evenly laughed. Marvel gently took her hand. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he said quietly enough that only she could hear, the best thing that happened to me wasn't business success. Evenly smiled. No. What was it? Marvel squeezed her hand. Finding you again. Evenly's eyes softened. The room disappeared. The noise disappeared. For a few seconds, it was only the two of them. Then she smiled and answered with the same honesty that had always defined her. Good. Marvel laughed. Good? Good, because I was starting to feel the same way. The people closest to them cheered. Evenly immediately pointed at the crowd. Y'all need hobbies. The laughter returned. Marvel shook his head. Still making jokes. Somebody has to keep you humble. And in that moment, surrounded by community, respect, trust, and love, both of them understood something important. The grocery store had never been the beginning of their story. Kindness had been. The simple kindness Evenly gave years earlier had returned in a way she never expected. Not as a reward, not as a transaction, but as an opportunity, a partnership, and eventually love. Before we end, tell us in the comments, Have you ever been judged before someone knew your story? And if you believe kindness still matters in today's world, please like, share, and subscribe to Love, Money, and Secret so we can continue bringing you stories that inspire, encourage, and remind us what truly matters. Because the lesson of this story is simple. Never mistake someone's struggle for weakness. Sometimes the person the world overlooks is the very person whose character shines the brightest.